Hi friends, I'm Jocelyn Peters and thank you for joining me today to learn my technique for alternating yarn at various numbers of rounds. So let's get started. I have knit here a bit and I'm at my beginning of round. Now I'd like to change from my main color over to a new color, a complementary color. So I pick it up. I don't need this yarn anymore, so I've set it down, have my new color. And I'm going to need about 6 to 8 inches here. So I'm going to hang on to it and go ahead and knit one stitch. And I'm going to set this down and just tie a little bit here, just once around. I don't have to pull too tight. I will be readjusting this later, but that's good enough for now. I pick my knitting back up gently and I begin knitting with that new color. Here it is so far, and I'm going to keep knitting this round and I'll join back with you when I have finished knitting this round. Okay, I have finished knitting all the way around, and as you can see, I got to my last stitch here and it's gotten loose. So here's how I'm going to fix this. Now let's say I just want one round of this new color before I switch back. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'll lay down my CC, my complementary. Oh, I'll pick that back up in a second. I'm going to take these, my tail and my working yarn of the main color. I'm going to tighten that back up just a bit. I'm going to look over here on the front, on the right side. It's a little tight, but for now it'll be okay. This part's a little fiddly, especially when you have first joined it. It gets a little bit easier. So I'm going to come back here, tighten this up just a little bit, hold on to it while I kind of tighten that up again. Now I'm going to put my CC across here, pick up my working yarn and bring it up and over. So I have a cross here, the yarn I just worked with and set down, I set over to the side and bring my working yarn back up and over. Now, let me retension here. Going to knit probably 2 stitches. Okay, I've knit 2 stitches back to my main color. Now I'm going to come back here and readjust just a little bit. Maybe pull that a little, pull that just a little. Okay, and I'm going to continue checking. Every time I start a new round, I'm going to come back here and check to make sure my stitches look right. If I got it a little bit tight, I'll pull it just a little bit. Now, of course, when I go to finish this at the very end, I have a little leeway with this first leg, but that's really the only one, the leg right next to the end that you're weaving in. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to tighten this just a little bit, and I'm going to continue knitting around this round, and I'll pick back up with you when I finish knitting it. All right, and I have finished this round. So I've done one round of the CC and one round of the MC, contrast color, main color. I'm going to switch back to my CC, but this time I'm going to knit 2 rounds each. So I'm at the beginning of round, I slip my stitch marker, I set down my working yarn across, pick up my new yarn, and manage this tail, make sure it's out of the way, bring it up. Now as I'm doing this, I want to pull just a bit so that this stitch gets tightened just a bit, but not so much that when I go to knit it, it's going to be pulled too tight. So I'm going to very carefully, there we go. Now that should be okay. I have some room here. Now I'm going to pull this stitch a little tighter again, and I'm going to knit 1 stitch of this color. Okay, now I have a little bit of work to do. It's not hard. I find that if this stitch is a little bit looser, first of all, if this stitch is the correct tension, it looks the same size. And then this first stitch, the next round I pick it up is a little looser. I will drop that, pick up the main color, and I'm going to look back here and pull just a bit, because the next time I work with the main color, it will be pulled up. And because of the way fabric goes, it's not going to be kind of loose, and it's going to be pulled up. So if I pull that and look, that looks fine. I pull this up. This is still the same size. It has not changed. If this is too tight, this is going to get too small when you pull up. So I've pulled up. This is a little fiddly, but it's worth it. Pull up on that. Get that right the size that I want. Drop the main color because I'm not knitting with it. Hold on to that so it doesn't move. Knit again. Double check. I might do it one more time just to make sure I'm happy with it. Good. Now I get to start knitting, and I will check back with you at the end of this round. Okay, I have knit around to my beginning of round again, but like I said, I want to do 2 rounds with this, but this main color, it got a little loose again. So right now, I'm gonna get it put back to the tension that I like. Good enough. Slip this over. I'm gonna be a little gentle here. Still keep this tension the same, but not tug too much. And knit my next round. So you can see here, this is what it looks like when we get to the next round. This little bit of thing here, that'll be closed up, so I don't need to worry about it. I'll see you when I get back to the beginning of round. All right, I have reached my beginning of round again. I have my 2 rounds that I wanted. It's time to switch colors again. Back to my main color. I'll slip my beginning of round marker. I'll bring my working yarn across, drop it, pick up the color I would like to start knitting with now, bring it up behind, and this is where I have to check this tension. I want it to look the same as the rest of the stitches, but I don't want it too tight. Okay, now I knit into this. I'm going to gently knit this stitch. I'm going to keep it kind of loose. I might pull just a little to make that a little more perfect, but I want to keep this stitch a little looser so that I can check it. I come and get this non-working yarn, the CC, and I'm going to pull it up to double check. Okay, so when I do this, I'm pulling up. This looks correct. This looks correct. If I'm not happy with it, right now is the time to fix that, because if this yarn that's carried up the back is too short, it will make these stitches too tight and bunch up, and I don't want that. So this is the place where it matters, the length of the carried yarn. I'm happy with it. I'm going to knit again. Be kind of gentle. I might even check one more time just to double check, because this is the time to fix it if something needs fixed. I'm happy with it. Now I'm going to knit 2 rounds. When I get to the beginning of round on this set, it'll be exactly the same as when I worked the yellow, the CC, and I will see you when I've knit 2 more rounds. And there's my second round. I've knit 2. So I'm going to switch back to my CC, slip my beginning of round. Now in knitting, this stitch, my last stitch, has gotten a little bit looser. So let's fix that. I'm going to bring the yarn I was just knitting with over and across, pick up my next color, and it's going to come up behind. I need to get it a little bit tighter though to keep that tension the same. There, I like that. Now it's time to knit the first stitch. Again, gentle. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's check it. Let's grab our non-working yarn and pull it up. It could be a little bit tighter, I think. Okay, let's check it now. And here I can pull here and pull here, never yanking, but I can play around with it a bit until I get it just where I like it. Okay, I like this. I'm going to knit a couple stitches to establish that so it won't come out. Okay, so that's pretty well set. Now let's look at these. These are not perfect. These are not perfectly lined up stripes, but you know, I'm really happy with them. They are fine for me. When you're knitting in the round stripes, it's really difficult to get them exactly perfect, and this technique is good enough for me. Now, I'm going to be knitting 3 rounds, and when you get to 3 rounds, you have a choice to make. You have to decide if you are going to lock in the non-working yarn at some point in those 3 stitches. If I'm knitting with fingering weight yarn, I tend not to, but I'm really careful on this changing yarn step, that I'm really careful not to let this be too short. If I'm working with worsted weight like I am here, that's a long distance to have yarn carried without being locked in. So I think with worsted, I would want to lock it in. So I'm going to show you both so that you can see both. The first time, the next time I switch colors, I will not lock this in as I go. So I'm going to go ahead and knit, finish this round and knit 2 more rounds. And when I'm ready to change colors, I'll show you how you switch colors without having locked it in after 3 rounds. I'll see you in a moment. All right, I have knit 3 rounds, and remember this is showing you not locking in the non-working yarn. So I have 3 rows or rounds tall that I need to carry this new yarn up. So I've slipped my beginning of round marker. I'm putting my working yarn down over to the left, coming back here, picking up my new strand of yarn. And now I need to make sure that these stitches are the way I want them. Sometimes this second to last stitch even will get a little looser than you might like. This is your chance to make them exactly how you want them. Make sure your tension is good here. All right, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to be very gentle as I pull this up and get ready to knit. I will knit this. Okay, now I can already tell that this is a little bit too tight. So I'm going to loosen this up just a little bit, keep checking this, pull on that stitch if I need to, and then I'm going to pull that yarn I just set down back up here and pull it tight. I'm gonna look. I'm pretty happy with that. I might make that a little bit looser. I find that having a little bit extra back here is better than having a little bit not enough. I would always prefer to have just a little bit more than just a little bit too little. So I'll get that set, get it where I want it. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna knit a couple stitches and check it again, because like I said, this is the time to check. Pull up on that, and as you can see, it comes up under and pulls that up. It locks it in, it makes it nice and secure. Now I'm going to knit 2 rounds and I'll come back and show you how to lock in this non-working tail. I'll be right back. I was just kidding. I'm popping back in here 1 round early to remind you of something because it's an issue that I just had and that I want to remind you of. So when you get to these last 2 stitches from that where that non-working yarn is hanging out, they tend to get a little bigger. They tend to want to get a little loose on you. So all you have to do is knit into them and then pull on that non-working yarn, get it back where you want it. Now you're going to have to readjust it, but this makes it a little more manageable. You can kind of get those two strands where you want them, drop the non-working yarn, and knit this stitch. Now, sometimes that first stitch on the color change gets a little big too. How do you address that? Well, you get this non-working yarn and you just pull up on it again. When you do that, it takes it right back down to how it's going to be. And everything is back to normal. You might have to, if you pull too hard there, like I did, see how that leg just disappeared? It's okay. It'll come back. We're all fine. And then you get back to knitting. So I'll see you at the end of this round. Okay, I have reached the end of this second round, and here's where I want to lock this in. So to lock in the non-working yarn, so this tail back here, I need to slip this beginning of round marker. Now, I'm going to let go just for a second of my working yarn. I'm going to pick up the non-working yarn, and I'm going to bring it over and out. Do you see how they cross? It's just like when I switch my yarns at the beginning of round when I'm changing out the colors. I bring it up and around and they have twisted. So check that out. That's exactly how you want it. You'll put that down, come back to your working yarn that is now back behind. And yes, these yarns get a little bit twisted. You may have to untwist them from time to time, but it's okay. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to knit a stitch and double check that everything is where it needs to be. When I pull on that, you can't see it. So it's going to be fine. So I'm going to knit another two, double check one more time. Looking good. Okay, I'm going to finish knitting this round and I'll see you at the color change. Okay, I have finished my third round here. It's time to switch back. Now you can see how the locked in stitch kind of sticks up and over. When we go to tighten this up in just a moment, that will disappear and it'll be hidden behind on the wrong side of the work. So I slip my marker, take my working yarn and set it down. I will pick up, oh, not that one, pick up my new color. And I have, now when you're doing three, this is why sometimes I don't do it. If you only lock in and then knit on the next round, sometimes it's not the best, but it is fine. So you have to do what makes you happy and works best for your tension. My stitch there is just a little loose, so I'm going to very carefully and gently, oh, just so gently, get that. I'm going to pull a little bit here, get the yarn to do what I want it to do. Remember, if you get frustrated, it's just yarn and it's all going to be okay. And you know, if it's not perfect, if it's not your favorite the first time, the next time, I bet it's going to get better. And then the time after that, it'll keep getting better. You just have to keep trying and find your knack. So I have set that down. I'm ready with my new color and I knit that stitch. All right, here we go. Pull this non-working yarn up the back. See how it's going to look. Tension this, tension this. Remember in the back, I have it locked in. You can see it right there, locked in. Sort of like the yarn is giving itself a hug there. Nice and happy and ready to go. So I have done 1 and 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3. Guess what's next? 4 and 4. This is essentially the same as 3 when it is locked in. However, it's going to be just a little easier in my opinion because we'll get to have 2 rounds in between that locking in instead of just 1. So I'll see you in 2 rounds. Okay, I've gotten to the end of that round it's time to lock in my non-working yarn. Slip that marker, set down my working yarn, pick up the non-working yarn. This is going to, let's see, where is it? Come up behind, bring the working yarn back a little bit. I'm going to kind of grab it back here with my right hand and bring the non-working yarn down and over to my left and set it down. The working yarn is through and to the back, and I'm ready to work again. I'm going to knit a stitch, pull on that non-working yarn, make sure it's happy and doing exactly what I want it to. And again, I will be able to finagle that a bit in 2 rounds when I change colors again, but that is good enough for now. So I will go ahead and knit 2 more rounds. Okay, I have knit my 4 rounds and I am ready to change back to my main color. So let's see here, I'll set down my working yarn, bring up my color. Now you can see it popping up there where I've locked it in. It's gonna disappear. I'm going to pull just gently and just enough. I'm going to knit a stitch. I'm going to check that out. I'm going to pull this up a bit, double check that it's looking right. I'm gonna check the back too, probably. If that looks like I might want a little bit more there, this is the time to do that. This is the perfect time for finagling. There it is. I'm gonna knit a couple stitches, double check it. Okay, so there it is. This is how you can switch colors, alternate skeins. Now maybe you're using the same color and you want to go every 2 rounds throughout an entire sweater because it's hand dyed and you need to alternate skeins. You could do any of these numbers of rounds. I tend to go with 2 and 2 if I'm just alternating the same color. It works well. Now, I will be honest with you. I don't like weaving in ends. I do it because I have to, but if I can avoid it, I've been known to carry yarn up probably longer than I should have. But you can lock in the non-working yarn, the yarn you're carrying, every 2 rounds. Kind of indefinitely. I guess it depends on the pattern. That you might not always want to do that. It is not the most flexible, and it's not always best. But it is possible if it is something that you would like to do, or maybe you're doing 8 round stripes and you don't want to cut the yarn every single time. This is a technique you can use, lock it in, and then switch your colors. I would like to make a note about when you are weaving in ends. So let's look at the inside of this. Okay, so I have my tail and it's coming off to my right. I'm gonna look and double check that the first stitch, let's see, if I pull a little bit, it's pulling on that stitch. Is it where I want it? Let's see. I like how that is. So I'm happy with that tension, so I'm not gonna yank on this at all. But when I go to weave in the end, I'll put it on my darning needle and I'm going to bring it across over here, and I'm going to weave it up and into the stitches where this color is. You can weave it in on this side. You can do anything you want to with knitting, but you are more likely to have a little hole there that you can avoid if you just bring it across. And when you do, look, you keep that line nice and straight. So it reminds you, you want to keep that straight line. If you bring it across, it lets you keep that line very straight and will avoid any slight gaps that you might have. You can do that at the top of the work also. If you end up cutting the yarn, you'll have to do that at some point. You would just cut your tail, bring it across, and then weave in to that side that you brought it across to. And that's all there is to this. So I hope that that has helped you with alternating skeins, figuring out how to maintain your tension. This is a technique that took me a while to get to the point where I was happy with it. So if it takes you some time, that's okay. Stick with it, and I hope that this was helpful for you. So, Sláinte mhath and happy knitting. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.